The Mangekyou Sharingan is a powerful eye, but this power takes a toll on the user. The more you use the eyes, the more they lose their light, meaning that eventually the user will become blind without any light left in the Mangekyou. There's one particular character that never seemed to really struggle with losing his eyesight whenever he spammed his Mangekyou Sharingan, and that will be Kakashi. This is also weird because Kakashi is not even an original host of the eye. He is borrowing the eye essentially. It's Obito's eye, and we see that it takes a lot of chakra from Kakashi. The Sharingan is not exactly suited for non-Uchiha characters that don't have access to Hashirama cells. In part 1, when Kakashi used the base Sharingan for like 5 minutes against Zabuza, he had to stay in bed for a week or so because he couldn't really handle it properly. His body was too weak to do it. In Naruto Shippuden, of course, he develops much more. He starts to use the Mangekyou Sharingan with his Kamui, and eventually in the War Arc, he is spamming it non-stop. But how come he never lost the light of his eye? Well, to explain that, we first have to delve deep into the lore of the Mangekyou Sharingan and try to determine how much the Sharingan can take before it turns blind. First, we can start with Itachi Uchiha. He went blind in the fight against Sasuke. In the very end of the fight, when he was using his Susanoo and going towards Sasuke, poking Sasuke's forehead and then dying, he was already blind. He lost the light completely, and we saw during the fight when we got Itachi's POV shots that Sasuke was very blurry, meaning that he had just a little bit of light left when the fight began. But to be honest, Itachi had his Mangekyou Sharingan for about 10 years or so, a little bit less than that. But ever since the Uchiha clan massacre happened up until the fight against Sasuke, he had the Mangekyou, and we can assume he used his ability somewhat often. Naturally, he kinda spammed Amaterasu and used Tsukuyomi a lot in the fight against Sasuke and also the Susanoo in the end, but then he just went blind. But then, we have to take a look at Itachi in part 1. When he arrived at the Leaf Village, he was using Tsukuyomi kinda, without much care. He put Kakashi under Tsukuyomi even though he had no need to it. Kakashi even said, "Hey man, you didn't have to do that. You could have just killed me, just tortured me for no reason." Now, of course, Itachi had his hidden reasons for doing that, but then, not satisfied, he put Sasuke under Tsukuyomi, and he absolutely didn't have to do that to Sasuke, because a 12-year-old Sasuke wouldn't do anything against Itachi. It was just to prove a point. But, casting Tsukuyomi is an expensive thing because it seals your own eye the more you use it. And then he had to use Amaterasu to escape Jiraiya's frog jutsu. So if Itachi keeps on doing this every time he encounters mildly powerful opponents, which he probably doesn't, but still, we can assume Itachi used the Mangekyou quite a lot during his career before he lost light. Of course, we have Madara, and he loses light as well. He becomes blind with his base Mangekyou, but we don't see how much he uses them during the Warring States period. We just know he got Izuna's eyes when Izuna was about to die. We then have Sasuke, and Sasuke is interesting because he uses Amaterasu once against Killer Bee and then Flame Control to extinguish the Dark Flames, and then he goes on the 5 Kage Summit and spams Amaterasu, Susanoo, and Flame Control kinda non-stop as well. He is not very careful with his usage of the Mangekyou there. He did way more than Itachi did in the fight against Sasuke in the past, so of course he would lose his light in that entire arc, though there is this big misconception that Sasuke went blind in the end of the 5 Kage Summit arc, which isn't true. You can clearly see when he confronts Naruto in the very end of the arc that he still sees Naruto blurry, but he sees him. It's just that he ran out of chakra when he awakened his armored Susanoo, and that's when the Susanoo fizzled out. Another explanation as to why the Susanoo fizzled was because Sasuke just wasn't used to the pain it would cause him just by maintaining the Susanoo activated. So yeah, it fizzled out. A lot of people say, oh, he turned blind because he was putting his hands on his eyes. No, that was just because of the pain. Sasuke still had light left, even after spamming quite a bit of his eye in that arc. There's also Obito, who seems to never lose the light whatsoever in his eye, even though he's the one who spams his Mangekyou Sharingan abilities the most. He only uses Kamui for everything he does. But Obito is a very different case. Even though Obito and Kakashi both have the same eyes, Obito is a different situation, and I've made an entire video about why Obito never went blind, so go check that one out after this one. But how about Kakashi? How much did he use use his Mangekyou powers? Well, it's safe to assume that Kakashi never used the Mangekyou Sharingan or his Kamui before Naruto Shippuden. Yes, he awakened the Mangekyou when he was about 13 years old, a long time ago when he killed Rin and Obito saw it, but it's very much implied that he only found out he had the Mangekyou Sharingan during the time skip and that he never even used Kamui before the fight against Deidara in the Kazekage rescue arc. And that's because Kakashi literally tells Naruto and Sakura, hey, I learned a new ability during the time skip, guys. I'm paraphrasing here, by the way, but he said something along those lines. So he didn't have access to the Mangekyou in part 1. People who say that are wrong. Kakashi uses Kamui 2 times in the Kazekage rescue mission, both times against Deidara. First, when Deidara is flying above him and Naruto and they don't really have a proper ranged attack, even though Kakashi has 1,000 jutsus. In theory, yes, this is probably an overstatement, but he should have something ranged other than Kamui, but of course Kamui is more powerful and therefore more suitable for taking care of an Akatsuki member. Kakashi uses his long-distance Kamui to destroy Deidara's arm, sucking part of it into the Kamui dimension and therefore ripping it apart, making Deidara armless, way before Minato in the War Arc when it became cool all of a sudden, and that was the first time we saw him using it. It was very taxing for Kakashi. He was the entire time, panting, putting his hand in front of his eye, saying he was, oh, I'm tired, I can't do this much more. And then he also had to use the Mangekyou when Deidara blew himself up to escape, pretending to die, but the explosion was gonna catch Team 7 and Team Guy, so Kakashi had to Kamui it away and save everybody. We saw that those 2 uses of Kamui really did a number to Kakashi. He was in bed for 2 weeks or so. He couldn't even go on the next mission to the Tenchi Bridge because he was just not up to it. Kakashi doesn't use the Mangekyou in the Kakuzu arc. He said that if Naruto and Yamato hadn't arrived in time, he would have to use it because Kakuzu had, captured them pretty good, but he doesn't have to, so it's fine, and he doesn't lose any light in that arc. And by the way, Kakashi never really complains about losing his light. Now, maybe it's because only 2 usages of the Mangekyou wouldn't really do a lot to dampen the eye level of your eyes, but still, it's something interesting to note. Kakashi is going to use the Mangekyou again in the fight against Pain. He uses it twice. The first time he Kamui's the nail that was about to nail him in his head away, and the second time he Kamui's one of the missiles of the Astral Path that was about to hit Choji so that Choji could escape and inform the village about Pain's abilities. Kakashi was very much out of chakra in that second Kamui, and that resulted in his death because he just drained himself out completely. So we see that Kakashi still had issues dealing with the chakra consumption and just the recoil damage of Kamui. Of course, he returns to life because of Nagato's Rinne Tensei, but when he does so, he also never complains about losing light in his Mangekyou. The next time he uses Kamui is against Sasuke, when Sasuke aims a Susanoo arrow and shoots it at Kakashi. We see this thing is really fast. Danzo could barely do anything about it. It was really troublesome for him. If he didn't have his Izanagi, he would have been dead a long time before the battle ended there. So Kakashi couldn't really dodge it, and he had to Kamui the arrow away, which, well, took a toll on him as well because he was barely able to walk on water because his chakra was dampened by the Kamui, and yeah, it was a big deal in that fight. But even after that one, he wasn't even complaining about losing light. Now, maybe it's because Kakashi is a very stoic character and he wouldn't just be complaining about, oh man, I'm starting to see it very blurry with my eye here, can somebody help? So I don't really see Kakashi saying that, but I could see him saying, yeah, I have to take care because I'm starting to lose light in my eye. And these are all the usages of the Mangekyou Kakashi does before the War Arc 5 times, which, to be fair, isn't a lot, especially because they weren't really back to back. It made sense for Kakashi not losing a whole lot of light up until this point because Kakashi only really used Kamui in emergencies and not really as a staple ability of his arsenal. But this completely changes in the War Arc. Now, if you don't remember, Kakashi actually doesn't use Kamui for a large portion of the war. In the first day of the war, he doesn't use it at all. In the fight against the Jinchurikis that Obito was controlling, he also doesn't use it at all. He turns his Mangekyou on when the tail beasts are about to shoot Bijudamas at him and Guy, but then Naruto saves him and he doesn't have to Kamui the Bijudamas away. But then when Kakashi, Guy, Naruto, and B start to fight against Obito after Naruto took care of the tail beasts. That's when the Kamui spam begins. Kakashi starts to use his Kamui without much concern. He Kamuis away Rasengan, he Kamuis away a Naruto Shadow Clone, he Kamuis away a Kunai, and that was the only reason why they were able to even tag Obito in the first place, so it was very much justified. He also attempts to Kamui away the Ghetto Mazo head with a massive charge of Kamui during that fight, which Obito simply cancels out. Big waste for him, if you think about it. And then when the Jubi shows up, he Kamuis the 8 tails on top of the 10 tails so that he can shoot a Bijudama on it. He Kamuis himself out of the Kamui dimension when Obito sucks him in, and he does the same after his fight against Obito, and he then uses Kamui again in the fight against Jubidara to teleport Obito and Naruto away into the Kamui dimension. Oh, this guy was using Kamui a lot now, and yeah, it's very much because this is it, the biggest fight of his life. The world depends on it, and Kamui is one of the most broken things in the verse, so to combat the most broken characters in the verse that are showing up now, like Jubito and Jubidara, you gotta use that. But the thing is, when Guy shows up and he begins to fight against Jubidara, Minato, Kakashi, Gaara, and Lee are forming a plan to help Guy beat Jubidara, or at least help Guy deal some damage, because it was difficult to touch Jubidara. The truth-seeking orbs were annoying, and you couldn't really touch them with your bare hands, or you would be disintegrated. And they form a very interesting plan. Lee tosses a flying Raijin Kunai, Minato teleports to it, and teleports away, taking the truth-seeking orbs Madara tossed against Guy with him, and then Gaara takes Kakashi with his sand close to Jubidara and his truth-seeking orb shield so that Kakashi can Kamui the shield away. But why didn't Kakashi do that from the ground? Well, and now we reach the main point of the video. Before they go ahead with this plan, and when they were coming up with it, Kakashi says, "Yeah guys, I am starting to see things a little fuzzy with my left eye. I've been spamming the Mangekyou Sharingan quite a lot during the war arc, and yeah, I don't think I can see it properly from down here, so Gaara, you're gonna have to take me close to Madara for me to be useful." I'm paraphrasing here, by the way. That was the last time Kakashi uses Kamui before Madara takes his Mangekyou away. And he was starting to lose light, and yeah, it makes sense. He was spamming the jutsu non-stop during this very short time period in the war arc, especially during the end of the war arc. It would make sense for the eye to be running out of light, just like Sasuke was running out of light during the 5 Kage Summit. And Kakashi is an Uchiha, so maybe the tolerance is gonna be lower, but remember, Sasuke was spamming all of his abilities. Kakashi only has access to one ability, the long distance Kamui. He doesn't have Susanoo like Sasuke was spamming, or the 2 Mangekyou abilities. So it makes sense for Kakashi's eye to remain active for a bit longer if he only has one type of ability. And it's also implied that the Susanoo takes up more light than other abilities as well. Just by how Itachi reacts to using the Susanoo during the Sasuke fight, it's not very pretty what happens to him there. Of course, Madara uses Kakashi's Sharingan to Kamui himself into the Kamui dimension, but only one more is not gonna be that big of a deal, especially because Madara has nigh infinite chakra and he is Kamui himself. He doesn't have to see far away, even though that kind of breaks the rule about Kakashi's Kamui because it's long distance, it's not self-Kamui, but I guess he is Madara, he figured it out. Madara gives Kakashi's eye to Obito, which uses it to Kamui them out of the Kamui dimension, and then in the fight against Kaguya to bring Sasuke back from one of Kaguya's dimensions as well, with the help of Sakura, who was pumping out a ton of chakra onto Obito. And Obito never goes blind in that situation as well, though he wasn't really using a very long distance Kamui, he was just kind of Kamuing in between dimensions. But even so, as I said before, Obito is a different case, which I've explained in another video. Obito dies and his eyes disintegrate, but not before he was able to pass on some of his chakra to Kakashi from limbo, essentially, and Kakashi awakens the Dual Mangekyou Sharingan, one of the most controversial amps any character has ever gotten. I am not a big fan of it, even though I always get shivers when I see the scene or the panel of Kakashi with the 2 Mangekyou for the first time, with Obito saying, "Wasn't this your nickname, Kakashi of the Sharingan?" That always gives me goosebumps, but I can agree that this scene is very contrived. And Kakashi goes haywire with his dual MS. He is spamming every single possible Kamui ability as well as his Susanoo, but it lasts for like one chapter. It's not a lot and it's very much a temporary amp. Kakashi literally loses the ability to use the Sharingan after he runs out of chakra there, so it's a different situation, an exception, and you shouldn't even consider that as one of his situations where Kakashi was spamming the Mangekyou in danger of running out of light, because he was about to run out of Mangekyou anyway. But yeah, long story short, he never went blind because he didn't keep his Mangekyou Sharingan. If he had kept his Mangekyou, if Madara hadn't stolen it and he kept on using it, he would have gone blind because he was starting to go blind and his vision was blurred in the fight against Deidara. It's just that most people overlook Kakashi's statement prior to their team assault against Deidara. Like this video if you enjoy my content and subscribe to this channel if you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, and to help me out as well. Both of those things really help me with the YouTube algorithm. And watch this other video right here on how Obito never went blind. Thank you so much for watching.